Welcome to Bulldog American History I COVID Exam Review. This is Unit 2 from 1607 in Jamestown to 1763 at the end of the French and Indian War. Let's get started. Jamestown and the House of Burgesses, the first permanent English settlement.
To get by ship from England to Jamestown in 1607, you have to traverse more than 3,000 miles of the worst ocean in the world, the North Atlantic, in a really small wooden vessel, terribly cramped, terribly crowded, eating salt or spoiled food, drinking water with creatures in it. And what's even more remarkable is at the end of the journey, you're going to find yourself in an unknown territory, stretching unknown distances in every direction except the ocean. And there's the ocean between you and home. It's an extraordinary risk to just make the leap into the unknown and plant yourself there.
Ultimately, the goal simply was survival. This was a wilderness, to put it mildly. The living conditions couldn't possibly have been worse. And there were Native Americans living here who appeared to be the enemy, and everybody was trying to kill each other. That colony barely survived.
When the first settlers reached the shores of North America, in Virginia and Massachusetts, the thing that struck them was the effectively unlimited extent of natural resources. They knew that the forests went back as far as anyone had ever been. They knew that there were fish in the rivers. They knew that there was enough land for generation after generation after generation of farmers. The mindset changed on the moment that the English colonists landed in America. Until then, natural resources were a restraint. Now, natural resources were a liberation.
The next thing you have to know about Jamestown is more people keep coming over. And the ones who come over later know something that the first ones didn't know, and that is that almost half of them are likely to die from local diseases to which they are not acclimated, and from other things, their own bad food, their own bad sanitation, and ultimately hostility from the Indians, whom they've antagonized by their presence. And yet people do keep coming.
They were either fleeing religious persecution, they were fleeing poverty, they were fleeing a ceiling that said if you're not an aristocrat, you can't rise. And so there's a real sense of greater freedom here than anywhere else in the world. And a freedom that's not just political, but it's also a freedom to become somebody, a freedom to rise, a freedom to acquire property in a way that did not exist in the more structured and medieval societies around the world.
So Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in 1607. Starving time, going bad. Pocahontas saves their butt. They're about to leave. They're turned around. It's going bad. And then voila, tobacco. They found their gold. And it wasn't a metal, it was a plant. So the first cash crop in America. And frankly, America was built on tobacco. John Rolfe's sweet tobacco was sought as a cash crop. Now, Pocahontas hooked up with John Smith when he first got here. He gets shot in the head, shipped back to England, and she's no fool. She's a chief's daughter, so she now hooks up with John Rolfe. Millionaire. Tobacco makes instant millionaires. Jamestown goes tobacco mad. If your next door neighbor plants a garden of tobacco and makes $1 million, wouldn't you do it next year? Growing on the sidewalk between grave markers, I asked my students, would you plant tobacco on your grandma's grave for $250,000? Stories of huge fortunes. People now are moving to the New World to make that fortunes. They're even using tobacco as a medium of exchange, as money. So 3 major things happen in 1619, and the most important one be the House of Burgesses. This is an example of the first representative democracy in the United States. Here it is, self-rule. We're on our own. Of course we're going to be ruling ourselves. But here's where it's established. So where's American democracy first put its foothold? Here in Jamestown with the House of Burgesses. Also, some of the first slaves, aka indentured servants, aka some were free, we're not quite sure. It's a mix of all three. Historians can't tell for sure, but we do know some of them were slaves brought over here to work the tobacco. And last but not least, you're not going to get any kind of civilization going without women. They bring stability, sense of permanence. And now once the women come, it's a done deal. Jamestown's going to stay. Now let's look to the north. Another group. Whereas Jamestown came looking for gold, Pilgrims come looking for religious freedom. They were separatists. They thought the king was too corrupt to run the Church of England. I might agree with you, but not a healthy thing to do, proclaiming the king is corrupt. So they got to get out of there. So they're looking for religious freedom, and they're going to find it in America. They rent a boat called the Mayflower, and they head across the ocean. They land at a place called Plymouth, just a little off course. They were supposed to end up in Virginia territory. One person was born on the trip and one died. There's Plymouth Rock. So they look for sites and they choose Plymouth. Now I will tell you, the colony, it survives. It doesn't really thrive. The Puritan Massachusetts Bay Colony thrives big time to what's called Boston today. So they had no rights to be there. They had no established government, so they're going to have to come together and figure something out. And this is where you get the Mayflower Compact. Again, another step towards democracy. So a year after the House of Burgesses, we have the Mayflower Compact, where all men sign, not just your rich daddy guys, everybody. No, not the women either. But every man gets to vote. Now, this is truly cutting edge. First form of self-government in New England, and laid the foundation that America be run by Americans. Brutal, but unlike the Jamestown, there's no giving up in the Pilgrims. They came here for hardcore religious reasons, not from some fly-by-the-night, get-rich scheme. So they're there to stay. They worked diligently, hooked up with the Indians, got some allies, defeated some of their Indian enemies, and that's where you get the first Thanksgiving. Now, they chose their pastors. Now, the church ran the local government, but they voted for their pastors, the power of the people. Very strict moral code. The devil, sin, and hell were very real, very serious, and you did everything in your heart, in your power to avoid it. This causes quite a bit of tension in Massachusetts, where you get things like the Salem witch trials. All right, let's move forward to the French and Indian War, because what we're looking for is the revolution. And what is going to be the spark that leads to the beginning of the revolution? And it's the French and Indian War and the debt created by it. So first off, why are they fighting, the French and Indian? So the French and Indian War is between the French and the English. Why do they call it the French and Indian War? Okay, well, I don't know. So French in North America, British in North America, and they're looking for that Ohio Valley, baby. They want the Ohio Valley. So we'll take a look at those timeline eras right here. It was rich dirt. So the Virginians, their land supposedly stretched all the way over it. They wanted that for the future, but France started building forts there. Uh-oh. The British asked a young 21-year-old Virginian named George Washington to go get rid of the French. It doesn't go well. Now that there's a war, you're going to get Ben Franklin trying to get the colonies all to work together, saying, hey, if we don't join the French, you're going to kill us and die. And they won't get together. They hate each other. They never work together. The turning point of the war will be the Battle of Quebec. This ends the supply lines coming by water to the French cities, and thus a quick fall of the New World France. Treaty of Paris is signed, ending the war, and France surrenders all land to Britain. And now it's British. Now, the problem is, wars are expensive, and this war cost a lot of money. It was a world war. There are not 2 world wars, there are 9 world wars. If you talk many oceans, many continents, many militaries, many countries, this was a world war called the 7 Years' War. The French and Indian War was just one small little part of it. That's the end of Unit 2 review. Good luck on your exam.